Hello, everybody. Welcome to First Canada Alumni Corner. I'm Jaylene Kostrzelski. I am our volunteer and alumni manager here at FIRST Robotics Canada, and I am so excited today to present to you scholarship application strategies. I'm an alum myself. We are joined by two very incredible alum, Mehak and Jordan, who I'm going to throw it off to talk to you about their process and their strategies to getting scholarships for university and college, including our FIRST Canada scholarships. So go ahead.
Awesome. I'm going to start off by sharing my screen. Let me know if everyone can see it. Zoomed in update. So that's why I'm having such a difficult time sharing my screen.
Looks good.
Cool. Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Mehak, and then this is Jordan, and we're going to be going through some scholarship strategies and basically just scholarship one-on-ones of what to do to get a bunch of money and fund your university or college journey.
So I guess we can get into our more formal introductions and convince you why what we're saying is, worth listening to. So my name is Jordan. I am currently enrolled in integrated chemical biomedical engineering and health sciences at McMaster. And in terms of some scholarships that I won, I was one of the TD scholars for the 2022 year. And in terms of first scholarships, I did end up winning a bunch of major admission awards at McMaster, including the FIRST Alumni Scholarship. So if you want to keep that in mind, as well, I was also successful in applying to a lot of different equity-based scholarships that had a lot of different supplemental applications.
Awesome. So hi everyone, I'm Mehak. I'm studying system design engineering at the University of Waterloo. Like Jordan, I'm also a TD scholar, but 2021. I was fortunate enough to win a first scholarship. So I received the Don Bossy Leadership Scholarship, which was super exciting. And I also got to meet Mr. Bossy on a Zoom call as well, which was super cool. But in high school, both Jordan and I did robotics. So that I think influenced a lot of our scholarship journey in terms of information we shared. Just as a general idea, both of us were lucky enough to accumulate over 300K in scholarships during our grade 12 year. So we're just going to kind of take you through the entire process and give a lot of tips and tricks to tackle this process. Yeah, so we'll start off with a land acknowledgement. I'm going to pass it over to Jaylene, if that's okay.
Yes. Yes, so many of us are joining today's virtual event from lands across North America. North America is known as Turtle Island by many Indigenous communities. And I'm going to read one for just a specific area that many of you may be joining from today. We are currently situated in Brampton and Caledon, Ontario. For thousands of years, Indigenous peoples inhabited and cared for this land and continue to do so today. As such, we would like to begin today's meeting by acknowledging that we live on the traditional territories of Anishinaabeg, Huron, Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Ojibwe Chippewa peoples, the land that is home to the Métis, and most recently, the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who are direct descendants of the Mississaugas of the Credit. Thanks.
Awesome. So I'll kind of walk through what we're going to be talking about today. So we'll go through where to start with scholarships, the importance of storytelling and how you can really leverage your experiences and being able to share that on a piece of paper. We'll walk through the application process for a lot of the different scholarships. Jaylene will give us a quick overview of FIRST scholarships and let us know what's coming up this season. And then at the end, we'll make sure that you're sharpening your competitive edge and giving you some tips and tricks on how to go about this journey. Awesome. So before we even get started, I feel like some of you might be asking, what even are scholarships? There's two main types of scholarships given out. So one can be through universities and colleges, and then the other one is external institutions. So FIRST, for example, would be an external institution. And these scholarships can be based on a bunch of different things. Some are mark-based, subject-specific, community involvement, leadership, entrepreneurship, We even have like different scholarships, for example, for FIRST or any clubs that you're a part of. Some include a written application process versus others are essay or story writing. Some you have to submit transcripts and presentations and videos. So there's very wide range of different types of scholarships that you can apply for. Just a couple things to note: university scholarships can be based on things like multiple things, but the main reason is that the money and experience received can only be used if you choose to attend that specific university. So if you get a scholarship from McMaster, for example, you'll only be able to use that if you end up going to McMaster. And then external scholarships sometimes have some guidelines, but most often than not, they're able to be used in different programs. So Jordan and I were both TD scholars, and I also got a FIRST scholarship, and those could be used at any university that we decide to go into. So yeah, hopefully this kind of gives you a good overview of what scholarships are and what the different ones there are. I'm going to pass it off to Jordan to kind of go through where we can start.
Yeah, so I guess for me, when I came into my grade 12 year, it was definitely very overwhelming. I had no idea what I was doing, and I definitely struggled on where to even start. So first off, we need to find scholarships to even apply to. So there's lots of different ways that you can find this out. You can find this out through scholarship sites. I think some of the more popular ones are like Scholarships Canada and ScholarTree. There's also lots of ones that are school nominations, and I think a lot of high schools will have kind of like a packet that'll list off all the scholarships you're eligible to apply for because you attend your specific high school. So contact your local guidance counselors and contact them about other external scholarships that you need to get a school nomination for. For example, the Loran scholarship used to have to get it. You used to have to get a school nomination for that as well. I believe you also have to get a school nomination for the Schulich Leadership Scholarship, so keep that in mind as well. There's lots of different things that could be like sports or club specific. So if you're involved in athletics, DECA, FIRST Robotics, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you can apply to scholarships because you are participating in that program. As well, like Mehak mentioned, there's different kinds of university or faculty specific scholarships. So engineering, if you're entering in engineering, is classically known for having probably one of the larger scholarship pools that you can apply to. So definitely look into that for the specific engineering faculty if you're interested in applying to those. As well, there are other schools that have just broader, larger scholarships that you can apply for. One of them that's coming off the top of my head right now is the Queen's Chancellor Scholarship. As well, there's, I believe, Western National Scholars and a bunch of other different things. So make sure you comb through the university websites to try and find what kind of scholarships you can apply for and are eligible for. And then there's obviously the ones that you can find on social media. There's organizations like Youth Culture and Youth Helping Youth that you can find, and maybe they'll give you a scholarship if you apply and get it. Anyways, let's move to our next slide. Now, even after we found all these different things, it can be kind of hard trying to parse and like navigate the journey of, oh, how much time should I spend on this? Where should I spend it on that? Before that's even happening, I think it's important to kind of orient yourself and make sure that you're stepping on the right foot. So first, I would try to consolidate all of your experiences. If you don't have a resume that you've kept continually updated, I would suggest trying to make one. Think of all of your experiences, your position, your role. What organization were you a part of? Also, a lot of scholarships ask for that. Try to calculate how many hours and the approximate time frame that you've been involved in. A lot of times they'll either ask total number of hours involved. So if you have a schedule, it can be pretty easy to calculate that. But if not, calculate the amount of hours you spend a week and then kind of multiply that by how long you've been in your role. As well, I think I would try to think of as many stats as you can. So if you had a food drive, how many pounds of food were you able to collect? Are there any significant moments and memories? I'll talk about this a bit later. But to even try and organize this, I would highly, highly, highly suggest using a Google Doc, a spreadsheet. My personal favorite is a Notion page. Notion is this kind of productivity website that you can create your own like organizers, schedules. However, I'm going to talk a bit about a specific template that I use for my schoolwork right now, actually, that I think would be very useful for you guys to try and list off your scholarships and organize it so you'll be able to see what you should work on at the current moment. So if you go into Notion, create an account, there'll be lots of templates. All you have to do is click on template. Then once you've clicked on templates, select the dropdown and click school. Underneath school, you're going to want to click the course schedule template. And once you click that, it should bring you to a page that looks like this. this is just a sample scholarship tracker of something that you could create. So what I've done is I've entered in a bunch of different kind of elements that I was able to put down. So obviously you have the name of the scholarship. I decided to put down things like the provider. So is the scholarship coming from an independent company? Is it coming from a community or kind of a more collective organization? Is it coming from a school that you're applying to or the school that you're in right now? That can be very important because it may affect what they're sort of looking for and what kind of class of winners that they want to put forward and advertise. As well, I think it's also beneficial to kind of consolidate and summarize the type of application that you're doing. So there's things like there's short answers, there can be interviews, there can be essays. Sometimes there's fun, funky ones like cases or tasks where they have you to analyze something and give your answer about how you would solve something. As well, one scholarship that I look forward to seeing the results of every year is the duct tape stuck at prom scholarship, where you have to create a prom dress or prom suit completely out of duct tape. So if you want to do that, by all means, create a duct tape suit or dress. As well, there can be things like videos that you can film as well. Then I decided to create a topic section where I could think, what specifically are they looking for? What is the mission? What kind of leaders do they want to recruit? Is it focused around leadership? Is it focused around equity, diversity, and inclusion, community? Is it a niche scholarship that they're looking for something super extremely specific? Like I think one scholarship that I applied to when I was in high school was from a local hot tub company, and they wanted you to write a short essay about like how much you love hot tubs or like what a hot tub would do for you. Anyways, so I would keep that in mind. Then this is arguably what I feel is the most important part of this entire template is noting down the due date of the scholarship. So once you put down the due date in this section, the template will automatically sort these lists of scholarships that you can. Unfortunately, I did not get a hot tub Mehak, but if you put down the date, the template will automatically sort it in chronological order. So you'll be able to see what due dates are coming up before each other. And that can help you parse and decide when you should work on what kind of thing. As well, I just put something like notes so you can note down anything important that you think would help you in writing or creating your application for a specific scholarship. Now, how do you even write a scholarship? You know, there's a lot of people who will kind of just list off what they've done verbatim, like, oh, I participated in this and that and this. I'm so busy. I deserve this scholarship because X. Finish. That can be kind of boring, especially when you have people reading over literally hundreds, maybe thousands of applications. So you really want to make sure that you're standing out among the crowd. And I think that it's very important to do this through storytelling and kind of using anecdotes of your own experiences. So where should you even begin? What I think is super important is just listing out as many core memories or defining moments as you possibly can. I would say to think of, next slide, please. Think of different times where you maybe faced a tough decision or some sort of large adversity. Maybe you had some really formative moments of character where you're like, oh, this has like permanently changed my outlook on X. Or you could have an aha moment, which is, I guess, maybe a bit synonymous with formative moments of character, but it could be like, oh, I'm able to think of a solution to this problem this way, and therefore I can apply this thinking to X. As well, this is what I used to lean on a lot in grade 12. Think about a time that you supposedly failed. Sometimes your failure could ultimately, in hindsight, be for the better. Or maybe you learned something really valuable from this failure, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I'll talk about this in a bit, but one essay that I ended up writing in my grade 12 year was about a Happy Meal. Now you may be thinking, Jordan, why are you writing essays about Happy Meals? Well, we'll talk a bit about how the structure of that specific essay kind of was so successful for me, but I was able to take the reader on a wild ride, and using something unique is something that could really help you to stand out among the crowd. Next slide, please. Now, about this McDonald's essay that I wrote, my personal favorite writing style, especially for applications, is a clickbait essay, is what I like to call it. So you know when you're on YouTube and you see these crazy thumbnails, it's like, I just won $100,000 on a boat in the middle of the Pacific, and I ate a McDonald's burger made out of seaweed. It's like, whoa, what? What's going on here? Well, you kind of want to employ that kind of logic within your essays. Out of all things, you really want your reader to be invested in your story. And we want to know things. And when we have immediate access to those things, aka clicking buttons on a touch screen, we will want to use that. So think about the body of your essay being a YouTube video, and then the first line of your essay being that clickbait thumbnail. Now, I like to tie in a bit of science. So a paper made by Kang et al. Suggests that when individuals are genuinely curious about acquiring knowledge, so you're going to foster that genuine curiosity with your first sentence or your hook, your brain's reward system is going to be triggered. And if you look to the picture, there's actually the mesocortical limbic circuit, which is their reward circuit, and it has things like dopamine, glutamine, GABA, a bunch of other endorphins that will induce some sort of like psychological investment.
Oh my God.
Sorry, I think someone's mic just got unmuted. But as well, once this circuit is kind of activated, it'll positively influence the application reader's memory. And if there's one thing you want to be in an application, is that you want to be memorable. So my takeaway, start off with a crazy out-of-the-box hook. And we'll talk a bit about that in a bit. Now, something that I like to employ throughout the body of the essay, which is something that's going to be important because you can't just sustain someone from a crazy first line, is that you want to take them for the ride. Take them for the ride throughout the experience that you're detailing. I personally like to do this called the butterfly effect, where it's like all of your little actions are connected throughout a story. And so with this McDonald's essay, I was recounting a time from when I was approximately 4 years old, and then I translated that impact to when I was 17, 18, applying for these scholarships. And that's something that can be really interesting. So bring the reader along as if it's actually happening and translate it to the now. What did you learn from it? What resulted from it? What have you done? How does this relate to specifically the experiences that you're talking about in the application for a specific scholarship? And last but not least, you're going to want to end with a bang. What do you want to leave the reader with? If you just stop abruptly, it's going to feel, it's going to make the reader feel a bit unsatisfied. You need to make it succinct. You need to give it a little flourish. So what's the final impression you want to leave with them? Are you being bold? Are you being inquisitive, joyous, determined? What kind of sentiment do you want this person to take away and you want them to know about you in the context of the scholarship you're applying for?
Awesome. So now that you've had a good understanding of kind of how to tell your story, what like that initial introspection that you're going to do of figuring out like what your story is and really diving deep, we're going to walk through the application process of what scholarships typically look for and how their application process typically works. So it can kind of be divided into like three main parts. So the first is your written application. Most scholarships require some type of written application. Similar for universities, they'll have like a supplementary application that can be applied for a lot of these like these different scholarships. And then the second part is getting references. So reaching out to any like community leaders or people that you've worked really closely with, teachers. Jordan will talk about that a little bit more later on. And the last part is interviews. So some scholarships will also have interviews. Sometimes there's multiple rounds of interviews, and we want to make sure that you're best prepared to go about those. So really getting the first part is like writing your application. Our biggest recommendation is get writing. So make sure that you look at the prompt, get started, really leverage your story and include specific anecdotes and then also numbers to quantify your work. Having those numbers is really important because that can show impact. For example, if you were on your robotics team and helped run an outreach event, maybe you can talk about how many kids were at the outreach event or how many people were impacted at the outreach event. And if there was multiple of these events, maybe you can count up all the number of impact that you had and include that in your essay. That's a really great way to show, really quantify the impact that you have. Jordan and I did talk about this a little bit, but we're not really big fans of the STAR method. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with it. We think that like everyone is going to be using the STAR method. So really leveraging that storytelling aspect that Jordan talked about earlier and getting your writing started is super important. Some overall writing tips is like write in different environments to give you a fresh perspective, better ideas. Maybe you can go to a cafe, maybe go to your library, and really look at the draft of what you're writing a couple different times. And again, like the more you write, the better it will get. And similarly, the more material you have to workshop, and you can reuse it for other applications. So thinking back to my scholarship journey, I remember I got started on my applications. Some of them a little bit later than I wanted to, but sometimes like a couple weeks in advance. And then I would write a draft, have some bullet notes, and then come back to it a couple days later. And I think coming back to it really gives you a new perspective. You can also make like a general list of everything that you want to touch upon and make sure that you include that in. And also like our next point is be qualitative when possible, and also be quantitative when possible. So making sure that you can include those numbers once again, really quantify your work like we previously mentioned. And you don't have to follow any common writing practices verbatim, similar to the STAR method. This can also sound in it being a little bit ChatGPT writing, and you don't want to make it look like ChatGPT wrote your essay. So having like your personal style, personal effect onto it is super important and will make you stand out. We're going to go into like some past prompts of scholarship applications that we've written and some of the prompts that have been there. This first one is for TD Community Leadership Scholarship. Everyone can like take a second to read this, but basically we were prompted to write an essay of up to 600 words describing your community leadership. There's a couple things that they wanted us to touch upon, which was how your involvement has made your community more inclusive and sustainable, whether and how your involvement shows initiative, innovation, the way your efforts have strengthened others, how long you've been involved, how you think the long-term impact will be, how your community has affected you, and then you can also include a brief description of any other community activities that you've been a part of. So I think something to note in some of these like general scholarship applications is that sometimes they're a little bit vague and up to you of which activities you want to highlight. I remember for my TD scholarship, I did highlight some of my first experiences and also some kind of tangential STEM experiences. So really being able to once again quantify that work. They asked like how long and some specific number of questions, making sure you can include and touch upon everything. And we also have an example from the Loren Scholarship. So I think this was back in 2020. So when the pandemic was just getting started, or kind of like everyone was in the midst of the pandemic. So the scholarship asked, how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected you, and what have you done in response to the pandemic? And then another question was, describe a time you challenged yourself by going outside of your comfort zone. What was the risk? What did you learn? So for Loren, it was actually interesting because they had multiple 250-word essays. So they were kind of looking for like a breadth of activity that you're a part of, different questions to kind of like poke and prick on what things that they wanted to learn about you, versus TD had one general essay. And then you could also include and upload some of your like extracurricular activities very generally. So these are two examples of past prompts, and leverage like that storytelling that Jordan previously talked about to help answer these questions, and make sure you touch upon everything that they mention in a unique way to stand out. I'm going to pass it over to Jordan to go through the references.
Yeah, so references can be sort of a make or break for you, because you can talk about yourself as much as you want, but when you kind of sort of have, for lack of better words, an alibi for your involvement or the actions you've done in the community, it can be pretty compelling towards an admissions officer or someone that's trying to read an application for a scholarship. So there's lots of people you can ask: teachers, mentors, trusted community leaders, etc. But make sure whoever you ask, you give them lots of time. The last thing you want to do is email a teacher the night before and be like, hey, I need you to write me a letter of reference. It's not going to turn out very well, even if it does turn out, because realistically, that isn't enough time. So try to give them minimum 2 to 4 weeks and a couple of reminders. Keep checking up with them to see like, hey, like, is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything that you're struggling to write about, etc. So that brings me to number 3. Try to make their job a little bit easier. So what you could do is this is what I did when I was in high school, but if I got a teacher to write down things, I would book a meeting with them. I'd talk about, what is this scholarship looking for, some experiences that they've seen me in, and how I think that might be appropriate for the scholarship. So if you can, try and have a more collaborative relationship with whoever's writing you a letter of reference.
Awesome. So now that you've got your application written, and you have some references, the next part is usually interviews. And as nerve-wracking as it can sound, interviews are sometimes, in my opinion, like the best way to get your personality across. Larger scholarships like TD Community Leadership and Loren have one or multiple rounds of interview selection, so they can get to know you the best. And those interviews can typically happen. Sometimes they're pre-recorded. There's also panel interviews where you're speaking to a couple different judges, and then there's like some casual one-on-one chats or one-on-one chats with some judges as well. I would say that before you have your interview, make sure that you like practice and prep. So before the interview, make sure you read over your application to know what you've written, in case there's like you've written about a certain topic, but for a different essay, you've probably written about something else. So really make sure you know your application in and out, and then research and make note of the programs or scholarships, like kind of what they focus on, or if there's any particular buzzwords that you should know about, what they value as a company and what they value as an organization, and also kind of how that falls into their criteria. And just so you have like a good understanding of what they're looking for, and you can make sure that you put your best foot forward. Like I mentioned, read over your application and also create a list of any extracurricular activities that you might not have been able to include, and any updates you have. So sometimes if you do talk about, for example, FIRST Robotics in your application, but your team has won an award after that, make sure that you have that update ready for them so they know that you're like anything new that's coming up that hasn't been showcased on your application already, just so you can share that update. Aside from this, make sure you practice interview questions. You can ask teachers, friends, mentors to help run through them. I remember I asked my math teacher a lot to help me do these interview prep, and she was super helpful. And it also, usually I was not the type of person that would really like practicing for interviews, because I was like, oh, like I can just wing it. But I think that practice like helps a lot, because then you can kind of have like a good idea of what to say, and how to phrase your thoughts. You can also ask past scholarship recipients if there's like any interview questions, and kind of prep from them that you can understand. And then during the interview, make sure that you're being yourself. You're being charismatic, you're smiling, you're excited to be in the interview, and honestly, just relax. You should be super proud of yourself that you've gotten this far, and it's a really big accomplishment. So just make sure that you're able to put yourself forward, and dress to impress. Sometimes like these interviews, make sure that you're dressing like business casual. You can wear pajama pants on the bottom if they're happening on Zoom, as long as like the top is looking somewhat professional. And if it's like a virtual interview, make sure that you really put yourself in the interviewer's shoes to kind of understand like their perspective. Sometimes if there isn't that physical component to the interviews, it's a little bit easier to feel like you're just talking to a wall and have that disconnect. But try your best to understand what the interview is feeling. Pick up any cues of if you talk about something and their like face lights up, talk about that a little bit more. Versus if you feel like they're not really receptive to a certain topic, maybe you can switch gears and talk about something else to see what they enjoy the most. And then after the interview, just be proud of yourself. Make sure you reflect. Making it to the interview round, like I mentioned, is a really big accomplishment. So regardless of how you went, just treat yourself and reflect on it. So next, we're going to talk about FIRST scholarships, and this applies to everyone here. So I'm going to pass it over to Jaylene so she can walk us through this.
Yes, so there are many opportunities with FIRST, specifically with FIRST Canada. There's also some through HQ headquarters or FIRST in general, and then some universities and colleges. So there's three main ones for FIRST Canada. So if you were at our FIRST Robotics Competition Provincial Championships last year, you would have seen these given out and there's students all excited coming down because they won these scholarships. So the first one is the Canadian Women in STEM Award. This is a $10,000 scholarship to one recipient. And keep an eye on these deadlines. They are approaching very quickly. So January 31st, 2024. So just over 2 months to apply to that one. We also have the Don Bosey Leadership and Innovation Canadian Scholarship, which is 5,000 Canadian to one recipient again. And this one is due on the same day. And as FIRST Canada, we will be sending reminders to on our social media, as well as on your mentors will get the updates, and they'll be on there as well. So if you're a mentor and you're on here as well, make sure to remind your students to apply to these. And then the final one that we have here is the FIRST Canada Indigenous Scholarship Award. So it's $5,000 to one recipient, and there's a couple extra weeks on that one. I am going to post just the link to all of these in the chat here. And that's firstroboticscanada.org/scholarships. So you can also see there's a couple other opportunities there. There is also the FIRST Canada Mark and Rona Bredner Leadership Fund, which isn't necessarily a scholarship for university and college students. However, it's something we want to draw attention to. The deadline is coming up, but it is an opportunity. If you work with an FLL or an FTC team, this is an opportunity for them to get funding for their programs, and you can grow those. So that's the first chunk of them. And Mehak has a good slide here showing exactly where it is on the FIRST Canada website. So go to resources and then scholarships. It's the first tab. And that's where you'll find all the deadlines, all the details to the application are right there and how to apply. And then we do have one other one that actually wasn't on that slide. So if you are a participant in SHAD, they also have 2 recipients for 6,350 Canadian dollars. So check our website. That application is going to be due December 1st. So it's very soon. So if you want to check that one out, go ahead. All the details are on the link that I also shared there. And then, did we have a slide for universities and colleges, Mac? No, that's okay. Okay, I'll just run through the university and colleges that, again, check the website. Not all of them are up quite yet. We do have some that, like, the applications don't open until December, or they don't open until the new year. So just keep an eye on this webpage, as well as if you know you're going to a certain school that I mentioned here, just keep an eye on their website as well as ours, just to get those updates. Just, we don't have all the details at this time. They might have changed the amounts or different things like that. So McMaster University, Nipissing University, Ontario Tech University, Queen's University, St. Clair College, University of Waterloo, University of Windsor, and York University. And there may be more, we don't know at this time. So keep an eye on that, as well as some of those details will be coming soon. I also did want to draw attention that the FIRST Inspires website, I will also drop that link in the chat. If you go to FIRST Inspire scholarships, there are some that are, and Mehak has it shown there as well. So this is where you will find the universities and colleges that are offering scholarships in Canada as well as the US. And there sometimes are some that Canadian students can apply to that come from sponsors. They might be more general. So feel free to take a look. No harm in taking a look to see if there are other opportunities there. So that's all our scholarships. There's so many opportunities, and always apply. You never know what's going to happen. So if you have any questions, drop them in the chat or raise your hand. I'll put that in there. Thanks.
Awesome. Awesome. So the next part, I guess Jordan and I are just going to go through and really give you some tips and tricks, any inside scoop that you want. All those who came to the webinar, we want to make sure that you're getting that competitive edge to make sure that you can really tackle the scholarship process. So for the first one,
this is a bit of an advert to check out the Youth Council magazine. I and a bunch of other FIRST Canada Youth Council alumni won very large scholarships, like the Schulich Leadership Scholarship, the TD National Scholarship. A lot of us got very far in the Lorentz Scholarship selection process. So please check those out and read about our experiences and our advice for applying to different scholarships. Now, this is something that I'm super duper passionate about, and it's something that I really want to drive home. Make sure that you're writing something that nobody else could possibly ever write. So if I were to ask, or if I were to think, how many people wrote an essay about crying over a McDonald's Happy Meal toy when they were 4 and how that changed the rest of their life? Probably nobody else. So if you can write something that only you can write and connect it in a meaningful way and draw readers in, it'll make your application so much more memorable. And I feel it really is a key to success in this entire application process.
Yeah, definitely +1 to what Jordan mentioned. And make sure that you're really being true to yourself. I think it's very easy to see through the scholarship, especially the written portion, if you're not being super genuine, or if you're okay, cool, I have to write something that no one else has written, but everyone else is like me. No, I think your personal experiences are so unique to you. So just make sure you leverage them as much as possible. The next thing is contact past winners. I remember when I was applying for some of the FIRST scholarships and also the TD scholarship, I reached out to some of the past TD recipients to just kind of ask them questions about their experience so far, if they have any tips or tricks for the application process. I think FIRST Alumni is a really great network of people to reach out to, because there's, like Jordan mentioned, so many scholarship recipients. So really leverage that. And I think if you ever send them a message and say that you're on a FIRST team, I feel like everyone is so willing to help out. But that's a really great way to kind of know what's up. And they can also help edit your applications, which I think is also a really good point as well.
Now, this is something that I think not a lot of people think about, but sometimes scholarship applications will have boxes for extenuating circumstances, to talk a bit about some of the difficulties that you faced, or to what a lot of people would think is to explain a lack of experience, quote unquote. I would say don't use those boxes as an opportunity for more of a pity party type essay. I would say use this as an opportunity to stand out and show how you've overcome. You don't want anything in your scholarship application to come off as a little bit sad or, a little defeated. You want to stay strong. So I would say write about the difficulties that you faced, but write about how you were able to overcome them, or what you've learned from them, or how you've gained something valuable and how it's going to affect the trajectory throughout your university career.
Yeah, and the next thing is make sure you're choosing wisely, especially for grade 12s. The time of scholarship applications and university applications can be super stressful. And I know Jordan and I have been at that point where we're so overwhelmed and really at the peak of burnout. But just make sure that you're putting your time into scholarships that you think are worth it for you. You don't necessarily have to apply for every scholarship. And a part of this, leverage your past. If you were in a scholarship application a couple months ago and you want to rewrite, just leverage that part of the scholarship application that you've written, and kind of reword it a little bit, tailor it so it's specific to something, but you don't have to really start from scratch.
As well, try to game the system. This is Survivor, if I'm being honest, trying to get money to fund your education. So I would suggest one of my keys to success, I think, was trying to play around with the scholarship or the application interface. So, for example, I figured out for one of my applications that if I put slashes in between words and didn't put a space in between the slash, it would count those words as one word. So I think I remember I don't know how I pulled this off or made it look natural, but I put an obscene amount of words slashed together. I think I strung 6 words together. Don't do that, but those extra characters or those extra words can really count. As well, some application interfaces count spaces as characters, some don't. As well, there was one application that you had to download a PDF, fill out the PDF, and then send it back to them. I was able to unsuspiciously change the font to be a little bit smaller. Not so much that it was noticeable though, but that gave me a little extra wiggle room to try and skirt in as many experiences as I possibly could.
Yeah, and lastly, like make sure you're being kind to yourself. Just do your best with every scholarship application and try, even if you think your achievements aren't good enough. A lot of the times, these scholarship institutions are looking for like a very specific persona, or sometimes there's like specific criteria that they're looking for. So if you don't get a scholarship that you're really rooting for, don't have that be associated with like your self-worth and how you feel about yourself. At the end of the day, the work that you're doing is super incredible, and irrespective of if you get a scholarship or not, that's still something to be super proud of. So just make sure that you're kind to yourself throughout this entire process, because it is something that can get like really stressful with university and school and everything just like piling up.
Mm-hmm. And I guess just to add on to Mehak, I think that especially in grade 12 when you're applying to universities and scholarships, and because it is sort of a competitive process, it can be really easy to compare yourself to others. And I think that that's something that really dragged me down when I was in my 12th grade year. It's like, oh, this person won this or this person got into this program. We're all on different paths. And I know right now, when you're in the thick of applications, it's like, oh, well, who cares? I just need to get into this or I need to do that. You don't need to get to do anything, first of all. And second of all, who knows? Things could change for you how many years down the road. And I think it's important that to not compare yourself to others. And it'll also just help you in your application process in general to not stress yourself out and hold yourself to a skewed standard.
But yeah, we're rooting for you. We hope all of you have a really amazing scholarship journey, and everyone here has got this. Everyone is going to do amazing. We're going to move on to any questions. Jordan, I think you have to say the slide just for the culture.
Questions, comments, concerns. It's like it's a little McMaster engineering tradition to like spell everything with a Q. But
That's so funny. I love that. Thank you so much, Mehak and Jordan. We are going to go to questions. I know there's a couple hopping into the chat. We did have some that were submitted beforehand, so I just want to touch on those really quickly. Somebody asked, are there FIRST scholarships for Canadian universities? So we just went over that. So there's many, so keep an eye on that website to see. There's always different ones and they're changing. So make sure that you fit the criteria. If I was part of my first team for only 2 years, am I still eligible for scholarships? Yes, for sure. You totally are. I think I wish I had this call when I was in grade 12. It was so helpful. But apply and just see what happens. The worst they can say is no. And that kind of goes for anything that you're ever applying for. Apply, the worst they can say is no. And just quickly, one of you want to touch on what the advantages of being a FIRST alum are in the scholarship process, or how you leveraged it?
Yeah, I would say I think a lot of my experiences, like the ones that I touched upon in my scholarship application, did revolve around FIRST, or this like common idea of being like a woman in engineering and woman in STEM, and kind of like being able to bridge that STEM gap outside of FIRST as well. I would say that FIRST in general is pretty recognizable in like university applications. I know for Waterloo, I wrote about my FIRST team a lot since I know that Waterloo really loves FIRST students. So I think like there's definitely universities that recognize it. TD, for example, I remember during my interview, they were like, oh, so you did FIRST, like, tell me more about that. And I was like, okay, like, I'll tell you more. So I guess like having that kind of like program backed up behind you is really good, and shows like how you can take on a lot of like time management, and just like the rigorousness of like being a part of the FIRST program, sometimes like going through school plus building robots plus competing. Like I think scholarships and university like organizations recognize that, so that definitely gives you an upper hand.
Honestly, Mehak covered everything that I would say about FIRST. I think that being in FIRST is a very unique experience. And, sometimes there's engineering students who aren't doing what you're doing until they reach their third or their fourth year, or they're doing capstone. So this is very, very valuable. It's unique and it's very impressive. As well, I would say that FIRST is very widely recognized. Even in my TD interview, like they know FIRST students. Like it's kind of a nice name drop, but I think it's also really important to be unique in the way that you speak about FIRST and your experience in FIRST. So I talked about trying to navigate different kinds of engineering spaces, and how I was able to, finally, I guess, accept myself as a person that could be seen as successful in engineering. So I would say FIRST is something that's definitely rewarding to talk about.
Thank you both so much. I think even the FIRST alumni community is very recognizable, even beyond scholarships when you're applying for jobs. So it goes throughout your whole life, no matter how many years you have been involved. We had another question. Do you have any advice on how to think of these core memories when storytelling? I personally take a really long time to think of any.
That's a good question. Honestly, it's kind of the same for me, which is why it's good to like get cooking as fast as you can. I would say that, I'd say just think of like literally anything. Maybe think about a really rough spot. I remember when I was in like elementary school, like very, very small, I was getting bullied and I was like, damn, this sucked. But I remember ending up inviting the person I was getting bullied by to go bowling with, which was a really weird experience. Like I was like, oh, like, do you want to go bowling to like the person that was bullying me? And then after that, it stopped. So maybe that's something that's unique. That could be like, oh, kill him with kindness, for example. But it doesn't have to be something that's like evidently obvious. That's like, oh, I can use this for a scholarship application. Just think of like literally anything memorable in your life, and then you can try and find something out of that to kind of translate it into, I guess, an overarching life lesson. But it can be a slow process, but I think it's definitely worth going through it.
Yeah, I would also say like ask like your friends and family. I remember like when I was like trying to think about like core moments, I like talked to my parents a lot. I was like, what do you guys think about me? Why do you think this way? Tell me everything. And then like talk to my friends and how kind of like people perceive you. Maybe that's like a good way if that really differs from how you perceive yourself. It's like something that can give you a good understanding about yourself. And like honestly, every single time you think about something, ask why, and then like just keep on going, like go down that why train, and I feel like you'll like kind of get to like a good like deep root understanding of something.
Yeah, I heard something at some point on a training that was talking about like getting that story out and ask yourself why 7 times, and then you get to the root, like really that strong emotion or that feeling that you had. So yeah, that's fantastic advice. I think another thing for me is like when you think back on moments, what were the moments that gave you maybe some strong emotion, or where that flip changed of like, oh, I'm like Jordan had said, like the aha moments. You don't realize they're aha when they're happening. It could have just been something so small, like you had mentioned. It's something tiny, but it can make a big difference in your life, and nobody else has that story of how that changed you as an individual. Okay, next question. Is it possible to receive a scholarship such as from FIRST to universities like McMaster, but not get accepted into the program? So I think that's if you received a McMaster scholarship but did not get into McMaster, you would not receive that scholarship.
I mean, I can touch on this because I won a FIRST scholarship from McMaster. It is possible to, I guess, receive like a rejection and still have a scholarship. But that would only be in the case if you still got accepted to an eligible program. So for example, 2 of the engineering programs that you can enter into in first year at McMaster are Engineering 1 and iBiomed. iBiomed has a pretty high entrance average compared to Eng 1. So it is possible to get into Eng 1, win a FIRST scholarship, but not get into iBiomed. Like a rejection wouldn't affect your ability to win and still go to the school if you have been accepted to an eligible program. But normally these scholarships, at least with McMaster, come with the acceptance to the program. So you wouldn't ever find yourself in a situation where you won a scholarship, but you didn't get into the university.
Okay, thank you, Jordan. Next question is, if you're a SHAD alum, does SHAD offer scholarships for uni? So I'm not sure on the details of the SHAD scholarship, but I am going to post I just added the details and application to the chat, and they are also available on the FIRST Robotics Canada /scholarships section of our page. Or do you know the answer to this? Okay,
Yes, because
perfect.
I ended up winning one of the
Oh,
SHAD
fantastic.
scholarships. So what it was for me is that the SHAD scholarship, like I just had to indicate it on a major admission awards application. So for example, the McMaster Engineering major entrance award, there isn't like a specific spot, I think, where you click off like, oh yes, I participated in SHAD when I was in high school. So I had to like mention it in my application, and then that made me eligible to win the SHAD scholarship. But yes, SHAD does offer scholarships for universities, but depending on the university, it's like different for how you can apply to it. But I assume it's just like through the university itself. You don't have to go through SHAD.
Okay. Thank you. You got all the info. That's why you're here. Okay, I got one more question that was direct to me. So how should we go about contacting First Alum? Do we use email? So this is something that I can touch on. And then maybe Mehak and Jordan can touch on how, if they did it. So I'm going to do a plug here. So if you are in grade 12, you can join our FIRST Robotics Canada alumni page on LinkedIn. You can always also join our email blast community network. So this is where you're able to connect with, right now it's hundreds, but we're getting to thousands. That's our goal, of alum like yourself, like all three of us here on this call, that you can connect directly with. So this is an opportunity. We post opportunities for jobs from our sponsors in these groups. We post volunteer opportunities. We post if we have an alumni social happening, like we had at the FIRST Robotics competition provincial championships last year. We hosted this event. So these are all things that you can that we have in here, ways to stay connected with a fellow alum. We also have our alumni corner here where you'll meet different alum every month. And then our university and college clubs. So if there's a university or college that you are currently at, or are going to, and we have a club there, we can connect you with those people. And there's clubs at many of the universities, or they're starting, and colleges, and we can connect you directly with those people so that those can be new connections. Another great option is alum from your team that you were on the team with that may just be a couple of years ahead of you. Those would be great people to reach out to as well. Mehak and Jordan, do you have other suggestions and ways to be connected?
Personally, if you're trying to reach out to students who are currently in engineering, LinkedIn is the way to go. LinkedIn's the way to go.
Yeah, definitely +1. I think LinkedIn is like, sometimes people are pretty active on there, especially if they're like in like first or second year searching for internships. So it's pretty easy to also find who's been a part of FIRST and what program on LinkedIn. Like you can just go to like FIRST, search under there and like search for a program, and then you can find people. Yeah, I would recommend LinkedIn as well.
Perfect. Yes, I'm always in there, so feel free to interact with me. And we're working on different opportunities for our alum to stay connected. If there is something specific you're looking for, you can always email myself. It's my first name dot my last name, which is just hard to spell. So I'll put it in the chat as well. I'm here for all your alumni and volunteer needs. And you can also find me on, you just go to the contact us page on our website. You should make sure that's right. FirstRoboticsCanada.org. Okay. You can get a hold of myself as well, and I can connect you with different alum that might be interested in working with you. Fantastic. Does anyone else have any questions, comments, or concerns? I tried. Okay, is it true that you need to be really good at writing to get a scholarship?
I would say it helps, but no. I like actually like suck at writing, like so terrible. Like I'm very happy I went into engineering because I don't think I could do like write a lot of essays. But I think just like spending, if you don't think you're the best writer, then make sure you spend a little bit more time on the application process or the written application process than you typically would. Because that is like the first thing that scholarships institutions like look at. So that's kind of your only impression. And make sure you proofread, get it checked by different people. I think the best way to get really good at writing is by reading a lot. So just like try to read a bunch of things before you start writing. I think that'll give you like a good kind of way to formulate words.
Mehak, I feel like it's also easier to write a personal story than it would be, this is the example I use all the time when I'm talking to sponsors about how everyone has a fear of public speaking, and this would go to writing too. It's like, you might not be a good writer, but when you're writing or you're speaking about something you care about or that's personal to you, it's so much different. So I feel like that also could have an advantage if you have a very personal story. Okay. Any last questions, comments from Mehak or Jordan? No? Okay. I just wanted to thank you both so much, and thank you everyone who joined us live and who is watching this recording. We do have more First Canada Alumni Corner episodes or workshops coming up. So ones that will be in the new year, telling your first story. This is a huge part of scholarships. This is a huge part of interviews. This is something that you will take into your adulthood, into working, all of it. It's something you'll take along on your ride. Navigating the transition from high school to university and college. That's going to be a big one. We're going to talk about mental health. We're going to talk about resources at universities and colleges. Other ones, securing internships and co-op opportunities during your academic journey. And then there's a bunch of other ones, entrepreneurship, post-graduation, those kinds of things for other alums. So make sure to check us out when you on Instagram, as well as on the webpage as you just joined Alumni Corner on our website. Everything's there. And if you missed it, we had an episode a few weeks ago about admissions process to universities in the US. So check that one out with Namira, hosted that one with me, and it was great. She did talk about storytelling as well, but fantastic information. So thank you all again. I'm Jaylene, volunteer and alumni manager at FIRST Robotics Canada. If you have any questions about either of those things at any point, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always super excited to talk about both. And thank you, everyone. I really, really appreciate you being here. Good luck on your scholarship applications. Bye.
Yes, we're wishing you luck, Kendra.